Hi guys, it's Kelly Taylor here for Hero Arts, and I am super excited about today's card. Today's card, we are going to be combining one of our new digital elements with a stencil. So this is the Christmas Elves printable. It has these adorable little elves and the sentiments that come with it. I'm just going to trim my elves down to an A2 size card. So it's going to be 5.5 by 4.25, and I decided that I needed to trim it to the 4.25 first before I figured out my 5.5. And I wanted my elves to be just a little bit further down on the card, so I trimmed off the bottom, and now I will line that up with the 4.25 mark, and then trim it down, and then again trim each of the sides so that my elves are nice and centered at 5.5. I have worked with digital stamps for years. I love them. They are such a great way to kind of bolster up your stash inexpensively. In order to combine this with my stencil, I'm going to be using the Birch tree stencil today. I am creating masks. So I just put in a sheet of masking paper that has a backer on it into my printer, and I printed them on the same sheet. So they're the exact same size. I know they're going to match up perfectly, just like you would normally have with your regular stamps. So I'm peeling off the backing paper, and then I'm going to apply them to my card, and this is going to protect my little elves while I build the rest of my scene. One thing to note when you're putting down masks, I started with the feet first, which is actually more challenging. So if you seem to be having some struggles with things like that, with putting down your masks, start with the more solid portion first. So for the next two, I actually ended up doing the hat first, and that worked easier for me. So here I was deciding between my two stencils, and I really loved the Birch trees stencil. And I think when you first look at the stencil, you don't necessarily see, or at least I didn't see right away, all the potential that it has for scene building. But it was really, like, the card came out better than I thought it would. So I did speed this up. I'm using one of our ink blending brushes to add a little bit of passion flower to the bottom of the card, and this is going to be the shading for my snow. Obviously, if you were doing, regular like summer or spring, you could, use green or, a mixture of something or another for fall, but I wanted to do snow since they are Christmas elves. So once I have the passion flower down in the beginning, now I put my stencil down. I do have repositional adhesive on the back of it to hold it in place, and I am going over the stencil with that same color. I am going to then mask off the top portion of the trees because I'm going to start to bring in a little bit of a darker color, and I don't want to get that into my sky. I wanted my sky to be a really pretty kind of like sunset that's showing off these beautiful shadows of these trees, which is making my scene so interesting. So here, it's not a perfectly straight line, which is totally fine. So I just used 2 pieces of masking tape to make sure that everything was masked off. Now I'm going in with Granite and, again, our blending brushes just to make these shadows a little bit darker in color than the snow that surrounds it. When you're ink blending, typically whatever color you put on top is the one you're going to see the most of. So I went in with the Granite, and then I went back in again with this purple to make sure that that was the color that really shined through. And it kind of creates more of a deeper blue violet color, which I really like for these shadows on my snow. So once I'm done with that part, I'm going to remove the masking tape, and then I'm going to flip it. So now I'm going to mask the snow and start to do some ink blending on the top to build up my sky. You could do this however you wanted. You could do, more of a night scene, more of like a day. I chose the sunset because I thought that it would be really pretty in the background of my little elves. Like they were, we're coming up on Christmas night and they're getting ready as the sun's going down for, to help Santa with all of his things was kind of my idea. So I went in with Summer Sky just along the top edges and just a little bit down the side. And again, I've sped this up because we have quite a lot to get through. This is a little bit longer video. So here, really liking the way that this is looking. And then I'm going to go in with Cherry where the sun would be going down. And I'm going to add that I can't put a sun in there because my middle elf is blocking it. So he's kind of the center, and then I'm just working around that. So from the Cherry, I'm going to go in with Tangerine, and then the yellow I chose is the Spicy Mustard. And I'm going to go right over the, right over the orange and blend that up. I did leave a little bit of a buffer between the yellow and the blue just so I didn't have any green in my sky. But it's enough that all the trees are obviously there. So now we can go ahead and remove this. Our scene is looking super cute so far. I don't need the masks anymore, so I'm going to go ahead and remove those. I did go in with the tweezers to start peeling them up, but my masking paper was worked almost too well that I had to kind of go in there and kind of wiggle them about a little bit to get them to pull up. And again, I need to take my own advice. This is so much easier from here on out. I decided to start with the hat, and then that was way easier to do instead of trying to do each individual foot and hand. So now with our masks removed, we're going to get into the coloring. So for the coloring, I am using Copic markers, but I'm only going to use a variety of colors for the skin tones and the hair. We'll talk about the rest of the shading when we get a little further along. So when we're adding shading to these cute little elves, there's going to be shading around their hairline where their hair is falling over their face, at the base of their ears because that is tucked behind their hair, and then where their hand is coming out from their sleeve, there will also be shading. You can use 3 or 4 colors. It just depends on what kind of blend you're getting for this particular elf. I did feel like I needed the 4 colors, and then I also added kind of a little bit of a blush cheek to all of them just because I think that is super cute. Now, depending upon what kind of skin tone you are doing, you'll have to kind of adjust your blush color accordingly. So for this one, a lighter blush color worked fine. As we progress with the other skin tones that might be a little bit darker, I will change my blush color. So for the hair, adding shading, again, coming out from under the hat, because the hat is laying on top of the hair. And then for her little pigtails, where they come out from under her neck, they'll be shading. And then where they're gathered together with her little ponytails, there will also be shading there. I left pretty much the highlight just along the edges where her hair is swooping down. I'm going to use these same brown colors for my next skin tone. Continuing to use the same colors in your design helps to make your card look less busy and like it has some continuity. So that is why I chose not to bring in another brown family versus what I used for her hair. I just stuck with the same one for the next elf skin tone. And again, you can see I'm adding in adding shading in the same places. Speaking is hard, y'all. And I did forget to mention that I added just a little bit of shading behind each of their noses. So for his hair, he's got very little kind of poking out here. So I'm just going to fill in the whole thing with my lightest color. And then because his hair is drawn kind of in like this triangle, these little spikies, I will add my shading in the same shape. So out from under the hat, but still sticking with that same kind of triangle shape. And since I want his hair to be black, I need to put black in it. So I took it all the way out to the 100, and then I will work back out from that to my lightest color so that it blends. And then here I've just picked a little bit of a deeper cheek color so it makes sense with those skin tones. For my third elf, I went with I don't know, I guess it's not a combination I use very often, to be quite honest. And this is probably honestly like my son's skin tone. I am very pale, but his father is Italian, and so he has kind of that deeper complexion. So this is pretty close to his, and he's even much darker than this in the summer, which is funny because then his eyebrows get blonde. Very strange. Genetics are funny. So here I'm just doing the same shading, blending that out, and then again I will use that same kind of blush color on his cheeks. And then for his hair, you'll notice that I'm showing you a new combination, but not all of it is new. The 25 and the 27 we used in the middle elf skin tone and in the first elf's hair. I only brought in one darker color. I just went one shade darker to the E29 just so it looks the same but different. Kind of like all their little outfits are. Same but different. And then once that's done, now we're going to get into the coloring of the outfits. You certainly could go in and add in the shading all with different colors. And I'm going to be honest with you, that is typically what I do. So I would have 3 or 4 red markers, 3 or 4 green markers. But because there was so much going on here, like with all of their little outfits, I wanted them to look very similar to each other, and so I chose to shade their outfits with my gray markers. I have the cool grays and the warm grays, but it will work with whatever grays that you have. I'm adding shading anywhere 2 points meet or where one object lays on top of the other. The only exception to that is the bottom of their little elf outfits has these ridges or pleats, and I did want to accentuate that to give them even more dimension. And so where the line comes up in their skirt, I'm not sure what they're called, I am just going to do a little flick of color to kind of add a shadow in there, and it's going to make it look more dimensional. Otherwise, I added shading to the left and right hand sides and then anywhere the 2 points met, and I shaded them just like I did everything else as far as lightest to darkest, darkest to lightest. Once I'm done adding these grays, you could totally leave them monochromatic, and I think that they would be super cute. They just don't look very festive, and we want our elves to be very festive. So once this gets blended out, I'm going to go in with 1 red, 1 green, and 1 yellow, and that's how I'm going to do all of my coloring. This is a super easy way to get good dimension if maybe you don't have a lot of markers at your disposal, or if you're just getting started with alcohol markers and you don't really want to invest in a ton, this is a really good way to still get dimension on your images. So I'm just going to go in and just go right over top of it, and you'll see that the shading is still there. Even though we've gone over it with this what color glazing, whatever the other color is, the shading remains. You can also pick and choose what you want to leave white. So like the little snowball, I didn't put a color over it. I just left it the way it was so that it appeared to be white, and we just added in the shadows. For her little stockings, I went back and forth on whether or not to do them like just red and white, and I did that and I didn't really love it, so I ended up going back in with a green, and then I was much happier with that. For the next elf, I'm just going to go in and show you what they look like compared to each other. First, gray shading versus no shading. So here I'm just going in and I'm filling them with a solid color. This still will work, just to be clear. This is still a very cute image. But you're going to see the difference in how flat he looks compared to her with her gray shading. And you can do it first if you would like to. You can do the color first if you wanted to kind of map out what colors you wanted to be what. But then when you go in and add the shading, you need to go back over it with the color, because again, like we talked about, whatever color you use last is what's going to be predominant. So you can, do it this way and then go back in and add your grays. But I would recommend doing the grays first and then going in with your color, just so you're not having to do it 2 times. You know what I'm saying? So I'm going to finish shading out these elves. Again, everything the same as far as adding the shading, any place where 2 points meet, any place where one object lays on top of another, that's where I'll be adding the shading. And then I'm also going to add some shading to my scene, my background scene. So I'm really happy with the way that these guys look. I think they're totally adorable. And just so you know, if you've never worked with digital stamps before, you can resize them. If you're maybe making a 5x7 card and you want them to be bigger, or maybe you only want to use one elf instead of all of the elves, you can print them to be bigger. And then it's the same thing with the sentiments. And Hero Arts has instructions on how to do that. So here I just took the shadow all the way back to the base of the tree with some blue violet markers. And now I'm going to put in the shadows for the elves. This looks really complicated, but actually is not. So all you're doing is creating the same kind of shape that is the elf. So from their legs, like I'm adding shading right up to their feet, and then I'm drawing out their legs in the same direction that the tree shadows are going. So I'm kind of down and slanted to the right. And then I'm just pulling them all the way out. And then I'm just adding 2 little flicks on either side of that for their skirts. And it totally gives this illusion of them having the same shadow as the trees and really kind of brings the scene to life. To further do that, I am going to add a little bit of shading to the birch trees. And here is where I think like you can really tell its versatility. This would be such a fun stencil for lots of different scenes. Like even if you just took the elves out, put a really cute sentiment on it. You know, I just really love the stencil. So I added some shading just to one side, to the left hand side, and to the underneath of the branches with my C5, and I'm blending that out with my C1, and this is just going to give it a little bit more dimension. I like to outline my images. I do this with my stamped images as well. This is not necessary, but I like a bold black outline. And so I always re-outline my images even when I've stamped them, just because I really want that outline to be bold and up front. So I did that as well. I also used a white gel pen to go in and add some highlights to their buttons, their shoes. You could also put patterns on their clothes. That would be really cute. Here I have printed out the sentiments in 2 different sizes, just so you could see. I ended up going with the one on the right that was a little bit smaller, and I thought this cute one that said a holiday hello would be really fun for the scene. And I'm just going to, you could color in this hello with whatever color you would like, but I'm just going to color it in black so it just looks like a super bold sentiment. You could also add ink blending to this so that it fits more in the scene. You could do a lot of things. I just left it white, bold, a holiday hello. I am going to pop it up on foam. Totally not necessary. If you glued it down flat, it would be more of like a 1-layer card, but I thought that it would be fun just having it kind of popped up a little bit. And then I just tucked it into that top right hand corner so that it didn't distract from my scene, but was still there for the recipient. So once I'm done with that, I'm going to put it down, and then I'm just going to add some shimmer with a clear glitter pen. You can add shimmer or not, whatever you're into. And then that is pretty much the whole card. That's it. So I hope that you see how versatile the digital stamps are and that you can combine them with the other products that you already own. Thank you guys so much for joining me, and I will catch you on the next video. Bye.